speakers here is Lori Dankers. You're at SeaTac, right, with TSA?
Yes, I'm based in out of SeaTac, yes, but I cover the entire West Coast for TSA.
Oh, good. And Kylan, okay, I wrote it down. Hewart?
Hewart, yes.
Okay.
Hi, everyone.
All right. All official.
And
Uniform and all.
Yep, all official coming from home.
Yeah, that is.
yeah, it's interesting. We invited you here because as Ostomates, we have lots of questions going through security. It is really stressful for a lot of us. I know, especially my first time, I just thought I was going to pass out. I was so nervous, but
No.
that officer was very, very sweet about it. So I asked people to look at the TSA site about ostomies. And I thought actually the most information was involved in the video there. But I didn't get any other questions sent to me. So if you two would like to start off, and then we'll have some questions afterwards. Appreciate it.
Very good. Well, thank you so much for having me and Kylan join you. You're very fortunate today. Kylan is a great officer. She works out of Payne Field. She's one of our lead officers, a first line supervisor, and she's also undertaken all of the training to be a passenger support specialist. And we're going to talk a lot about that program, how you can have someone help you come through security with somebody trained to assist, and what the name of that program is, all of that, so that the next time you travel, which for a lot of people right now, that's on hold. So this is a perfect time to be talking about these things, but you'll know what resources are available so that you don't have something similar to what Sue has just described. And she had written me earlier today and described how she felt that first time going through security. We want everybody to get through quickly and comfortably. And fortunately, people like Kylan are the ones who will help you do that. But anytime I get a chance to speak to a group, I always like to highlight some of the changes that have been in the security checkpoint for all passengers since the spread of COVID-19. So I just have a brief presentation I want to share with you so that we can talk a little bit about that. And I think I'll be able to bring that up. Can everybody see that?
Yes. Yes.
Wonderful. All right. So we call this entire initiative Stay Healthy, Stay Secure. And the next time you travel, if you haven't traveled already since early summer last year, these are some of the things that you're going to see. Really, there's 4 major elements to the Stay Healthy, Stay Secure campaign, and we're going to go through each of those individually. Of course, social distancing, you see it everywhere you go from the grocery store. You'll definitely see it at the airport. It can be a very big challenge in the airport because we are in a confined space. But we're asking people to remember to give other travelers space around you. And we also ask our employees to social distance as well. And that can be a challenge for them, but we are ensuring that that is there because we do know that that does help. That distance as well as the duration of being close with someone are major factors, and concerned about the distance. The other thing you're going to see is a lot of signage in the checkpoint. Each airport usually has their own signage, but we'll have our the TSA approved signage. It will look like this, and many airports that you travel out of to remind you. I know at SeaTac they've been really creative. For example, 2 salmon. Or maybe the width of a moose's ears or something is how far you should stay away, trying to make it a little bit fun, something that's not too fun, but they're doing their best. And I have to hand it to them because anything we can do to mix it up in this really ubiquitous messaging is helpful. The next thing that I want people to know is that we have really worked to reduce physical contact between our employees and the traveler. So you're going to see acrylic barriers at dozens upon dozens of airports. I think more than 240 airports now have TSA provided acrylic barriers. Other airports have barriers that may have been provided by the airport itself, but you're going to see that any point where there's that interaction between the TSA employee and the traveler. So the example is when you're handing over your photo ID, when you're getting ready to remove items from your bag, or unfortunately, if you need a bag check, all those places will be sectioned off with that acrylic barrier. So you should know that that's for your protection and our employees' protection. Also, we're asking passengers to keep possession of their boarding pass. We don't want to have a potential cross-contamination. You'd be asked to scan that when coming through the security checkpoint at any airport across the country. So keep that in mind as well. You would still have to, at many airports, hand over your photo ID if asked to do so, but you would keep the boarding pass in your own possession. The next thing that we have is new technology. We're rolling it out across the country. Interestingly enough, this technology was in place before the coronavirus started to spread. But what's happened is we've accelerated the deployment of it. And we have one of these units called Credential Authentication Technology at Payne Field. What that means is when you come up to where they check the travel documents, you are going to be asked to insert your own photo ID into a unit. It's essentially a reader. The TSA officer will point to you where to insert your ID. The unit is capable of reading your basic biographical information. It compares it against what we call the secure flight database. That is the database of people ticketed to travel on that particular day. And what it does is it confirms to the officer that you're okay to travel. They're going to do a quick verification to ensure that you are the person on the ID. You're going to be asked to briefly adjust your face mask so they can do that ID check, put your face mask back up where it was, and then you're going to be on your way. There is no need when the credential authentication technology is in use to show a boarding pass because that the technology pulls up your flight information through its abilities, so its capabilities. So keep that in mind. I always tell people you're not going to know whether one of these CAT units, which is what we call them, is in use. So just listen to the direction the TSA officer gives you. But really, this is a touchless, no contact way to provide your travel documents. You're inserting your own ID, you're keeping your own boarding pass. The officer's going to verify it just right on the site and you'll be on your way. Now, let me remind you of one thing. If you get used to flying out of a particular airport that has CAT in use, you still have to check in for your flight. We have passengers who are like, oh, I don't need to show my boarding pass. I'm not going to check in. And then when they get to the gate, that window has closed and the airline has canceled their flight. So always check in and just know that you may be asked to show that boarding pass when you board the plane. So keep that in mind. And we are having that issue at some airports. I heard from one just last week in Montana, and they had several people traveling together on a flight and none of them checked in because they're used to seeing CAT. So you know now what to do. All right. Now, I always say that passengers are the greatest partner in security. And that's because you can take steps as a traveler to ensure that you don't have to make contact with anything in the security checkpoint or with a TSA employee. And that is, don't bring any of those prohibited items in your carry-on luggage. We're talking knives, we're talking oversized liquids, firearms. People bring those in their carry-ons, they forget they're in their bag. We don't want to see those because when you have a prohibited item in your bag, it requires a bag check. That's extended amount of time in the checkpoint. And even though there's going to be an acrylic barrier, a TSA officer will be touching your belongings because they are required by our policies to resolve any security threat. So double check your bag. My tip for that is always unpack your bag before you pack it so you're not surprised at the checkpoint. Our officers are great at finding prohibited items, as you probably all know from your experience when you said, I didn't know I brought that. Well, they'll find it for you, but they're going to find it for you at an inopportune time. So please be careful. That's for your own safety and health. The other thing is, remember, when you remove things like your cell phone, keys, your wallet, do not place those in a bin. A bin is a common use item that will be used by dozens, if not hundreds of people in any single day. Instead, place those items securely in your carry-on. Zip them into an outside pocket. Or if you know in your backpack you have a side pocket, place them all in there. That's not only good for no cross-contamination, but you're not going to forget them in the security checkpoint. We all have left things behind and we know that sinking feeling. That will avoid that. And the last thing is, if you're traveling through our general lanes, the non-TSA pre-check lanes, you are going to need to remove your food. So be prepared for that. Put your food in a gallon size Ziploc bag that's clear. That way our officer can see the contents of the bag and your bag is not going to make contact with that bin. I can only imagine the disappointment when you have that apple and you place it in a bin and about 10 minutes later you say, I don't want to eat this. It's been in a bin. Well, I wouldn't either. So place your items in that 1 gallon size Ziploc bag. The officer will be able to clear that very quickly. No cross-contamination will have occurred. So those are our tips to help you get through with minimal contact. Another thing that you're going to see is our officers wear full PPE. They're required to wear a surgical mask, gloves, and a face shield if they're going to come in close contact with a passenger. Also, They're going to change their gloves at the end of every rotation and at a passenger's request. So if you come into the checkpoint and for some reason you either need a bag check or additional screening, you have the right to say to the TSA officer, could you please change your gloves? And they will do that. I have done that because I have traveled during the pandemic and they have changed their gloves, and I know that then they have a fresh pair. There's other things they can do, like they can use rubbing alcohol to sanitize them. But if you want them to change their gloves, they are required to do that. They'll also change their gloves after a pat down of a traveler because we want to ensure there's no cross-contamination. Also, travelers are required to wear a face mask. We're going to talk a little bit about that federal requirement. And if for some reason you don't have one, you'll be offered one. It is now a federal requirement to wear a face mask anywhere in the nation's transportation system. We'll get into that later. Cleaning and disinfecting, you're going to see a lot more of that. We actually have officers who are assigned during their shift to do a little cleaning and disinfecting, but in addition, they are also watching their coworkers to make sure that they're following the cleaning and disinfecting policies and direction, making sure that they're following social distancing. We found with the reduced passenger load, we have the staff to be able to do that, to have that person be that in-person reminder to the staff. And you'll see that when you come through the checkpoint. So not only are airports have additional contracts for cleaning, but we are ensuring that that is the case as well. Something that's important for people to know is TSA has extended the amount of liquid hand sanitizer that travelers can bring in their carry-on. Normally, it's a 3.4 ounce limit for any liquid, but during the COVID-19 pandemic, TSA has increased that amount to up to 12 ounce container per passenger in your carry-on luggage. We know that people are going to want to have their hand sanitizer once they clear security, when they're at the gate, of course, on the plane, and then when they arrive at their destination, and they're not going to want to wait for their checked baggage. So keep that in mind, take that with you. The airlines also have a lot of this type of information on their website, and it is in fact true. And so please keep that with you, because I really think and encourage you to use it. This is an infographic that I'll make available to Sue to share with you. It's just a reminder of the various elements of our Stay Healthy, Stay Secure campaign. I went through those pretty quickly, but then you can read through these to know yourself. So if there's any particular area you're concerned about, you can see what we're doing to address that. So I said I would talk about the federal face mask requirement. You're going to see these signs not only at the airport, but you're going to see them in transit stations and ferry terminals here in the Pacific Northwest, even train stations if you're riding Amtrak. This is essentially the summary of what is required of people. The signage is available in both English and in Spanish. And the most important thing for people to know is it is required you wear a face mask, and if you don't, you may be subject to civil penalties. Here's the timeline for the face mask order. On January 21st, President Biden issued an executive order dealing with transportation and COVID-19. They said essentially they want people to be wearing a face mask while they're anywhere in the nation's transportation network. Then on January 29th, the Centers for Disease Control, which is the lead federal agency in response to COVID-19, came up with an emergency order, and TSA used its security directives and an emergency amendment that actually put this into action, and it went into effect on Tuesday, February 2nd. And what is the most important thing for people to know is our dear Kylan is not going to be chasing people in the airport. If they're not wearing their mask, that is not her job. But transportation operators throughout the transportation network have been given direction if they have a traveler who's not adhering to that policy to notify TSA. TSA will look at the circumstance and has the option to levy a civil penalty. You can see the range starts at $250 for the first offense, up to $1,500 for repeat offenders. And as you know, several airlines also have their own no-fly list, and they're not permitting people to fly their airline in the future. And that in itself is a penalty, especially if the airline that bans you is one that goes somewhere that you need to be. So that is in place. It is being enforced. But I can tell you in the state of Washington and in the Puget Sound region, we've had mask requirements in place for some time. The compliance is very, very high. There are other parts of the country when this came out, they were stressed. masks because they don't wear their masks there. But here we do. So we're in pretty good shape, and I hope that you will too. But that is what the federal mask requirement is and how it came to be. All right, I want to talk briefly about TSA PreCheck. I mentioned it earlier. If you're in the general screening lane, you need to remove your food from your carry-on. Well, I have some good news. If you are eligible for TSA PreCheck, if you've enrolled as a trusted low-risk traveler, you'll get to leave that food in your carry-on luggage. You're also going to leave on your shoes. You're going to leave your laptops. Any electronic larger than a cell phone can stay in your carry-on luggage. You're also going to leave your travel-size liquids in your carry-on. You can leave your light outer jacket on and a belt, presuming you don't wear a belt with a big metal belt buckle that would set off the security equipment. And all of this is possible with TSA PreCheck. And we do offer that at Payne Field. We also have dedicated lanes at more than 225 airports nationwide. But any airport, even if it doesn't have a dedicated lane, will offer you the full TSA PreCheck experience, which will really allow you to get through security much quicker and much more conveniently. And we consider that to be the best assurance for a touchless experience, because you're essentially just going to lay your carry-on on the conveyor belt and pick it up on the other side, presuming you brought no prohibited items. And that's quite a deal. So you might want to consider it right now. We have a temporary location for our TSA PreCheck Enrollment Center in Everett. It's actually in the Marriott Hotel there. They're open Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, Tuesday mornings, Wednesday and Friday afternoons. I know that the site where it had been previously is under construction, but right now you can go, you can make an appointment. Takes about 5 to 7 minutes to enroll. And within a week, if you're eligible, you don't have any disqualifying criminal
Get on the
convictions.
car in the back seat.
Okay,
Everything is back there.
well, it's hard to see in the back seat.
It's hard to see what? Okay, so anyways, there is this permanent location in Everett. If you want to look at some of the other sites, you could go to the website universalenroll.dhs.gov. You can enter your zip code. It will tell you the closest place and the hours. To enroll in PreCheck, it takes about 5 to 7 minutes. You need to either bring your passport or a certified copy of your birth certificate and your driver's license. It is $85 and it covers a 5-year period, so about $17 per year. And when it's time to enroll 5 years in the future, you can do that online, and that's very convenient. So I would highly encourage people to consider this, especially as we get into the meat of our presentation about ostomies and issues of concern to your group. I think you're going to find it will really simplify your process. So please keep that in mind. So if you have any questions, please let me know on this portion of the presentation. I'm happy to address those now before we move on.
I'm out of Texas participating. I used to belong to this group. My question is, our TSA number has expired, so I can go online and re-enroll?
So that's a very good question. So how long ago did it expire?
I think it expired last year.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you to send me an email, and I'm going to get you in touch with the TSA PreCheck program managers, and I'm going to ask them if they would allow you to re-enroll, re-up your membership online. I know with the coronavirus, some of the enrollment centers were closed for a period of time. The vast majorities are now open with the social distancing and a lot of the procedures in place that you see other places. But if you just send me an email, I'll get you in touch with them and they'll give you a straight answer on that. So we can get you
Okay.
back on track
Thank you
with
so
that.
much.
Of course, I'll watch for that. That's a
Let me
great.
ask, can I ask you one more question pertaining to that? TSA Global, does that cover the TSA pre in the United States and internationally?
All right, so she's asking if you have global entry, whether that would cover TSA PreCheck in the US and overseas. So the answer is TSA PreCheck is one of the benefits of being a global entry member. That is a program offered by a sister agency of TSA within the Department of Homeland Security, and it's expedited clearance back into the country when you return by air from a foreign country. So one of the side benefits is you are eligible for TSA PreCheck because you're a vetted traveler. We know you're a low risk traveler to be in that program. It does not work overseas unless you're coming in from a country that's pre-clearance. A good example would be if you're flying to the United States from Dublin. If they offer TSA PreCheck, yes, because that's a special system, a special relationship we have with the country of Ireland. But in most places, you won't find TSA security checkpoints because those only operate domestically across the board. And most countries have their own type of TSA pre-check program that would not be covered by us. So essentially, it's a domestic program with limited exceptions overseas.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
I have
Yeah.
a question.
Sorry, I have one question. And it's just on, you were talking about not putting, not having to pull your cell phone and your keys and so forth, just putting them in a backpack or whatever. What size up to? Do you, what do you, including laptops, or what do you do with the laptop? Do you still put that in the bin?
So if you are in TSA pre-check, you get
No,
to leave your laptop in your bag. You are in pre-check?
No, I'm talking about if you're in regular, if you're not in pre-check. So you have to pull your laptop out and put it in the bin.
Yes.
What about a, you know, a tablet or something like that? Do you keep that in your backpack or?
That's a great question. So it's electronics larger than a cell phone.
Okay,
So your cell phone does not need to come out, but everything else does. So the examples we often give are things like gaming consoles, tablets, Kindles,
okay.
social laptops, all of those. With TSA pre-check, they stay in your bag. But our officers in the general lane need to get a good look at the electronics of those, which is why we have them, have you remove them. That's a good question. Thank you. Anything else about this portion?
Yeah, I had a question, Dan here.
Hi, Dan.
To get the enhanced or the pre-check,
Mhm.
will your enhanced driver's license work for that, or you still need a birth certificate or something?
Yes, so the enhanced driver's license, you will still need to bring the certified copy of your birth certificate. And I am going to follow up with you. If you'll send me an email, I need to confirm that that is the case. Washington State has an enhanced driver's license, which has to do with the Real ID Act. This is really kind of getting into the woods here, but I want to verify that an enhanced driver's license doesn't substitute for the certified copy of your birth certificate, because chances are you may have shown that to get your enhanced driver's license in the state of Washington.
You do.
Yes, so I'm going to go ahead and verify that for you if you'll drop me a note, and I'll also let Sue know so that
It
we
is
can.
because the enhanced shows the
I've actually been asked that
Listen
question
to the other
before
one
you get a
does not.
prize.
And to get a certified copy of your birth certificate, you have to take it to a notary or something?
So you have to have the type of birth certificate that has the raised seal. You normally go to the vital statistics office in the county where you were born. You can usually order those through the mail, over the phone, and they'll mail it to you. What we don't want to see is the really cute novelty birth certificate with the footprints on it. Those are great, but they're not a certified copy. They can't be used legally. So you're going to want the one with the raised seal,
So
which is always a good document to have anyways in your document files.
you could just show them the original, and then they make a copy of it.
So they will make a copy of your documents to have them on file so that they have proof that you have provided those. But yeah, so if you have a raised seal on your birth certificate, you would just need to bring that. Now, the reason a passport also works for enrollment is because when you got your initial passport, you had to provide that documentation up front.
I have
And
that too.
great.
So.
Yeah. Okay, so if you have the passport, that's all you'll need. If not, the driver's license and the certified copy of the birth certificate, and I'm going to get a clarification on the enhanced driver's license.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Question,
You're muted. Of course.
I'm muted. We have a Nexus card. Does that work also in the check line?
Yes, so he has a Nexus card, which is also issued by Customs and Border Protection. It's for land crossings between the United States and Canada. And yes, that also gives you TSA pre-check benefits. And the other thing that's great about a Nexus card is it only costs $50 for 5 years. So it's actually the best deal of all. But let me caution you, to get a Nexus card, and I don't know how long you had to wait. Right now, the wait to get one is about 18 months, because not only do you need to interview with a US Customs and Border protection officer, you also have to interview with their counterpart in Canada, and they don't make very many.
This is only good between US and Canada, and US and Mexico is not good for international. That's right. So that's not a good deal.
Lori, how long did you say it took when you go in to get this pre-checked? Like you go in and Everett, it looked like, and how long was the wait there and how long does it take them to,
So we-
I'm assuming, send it to you in the mail?
Yeah, so we encourage people to make an appointment so you don't have to wait. People do not like to wait right now because they don't like to spend that much time around other people.
Right.
So you go online at that universalenroll.dhs.gov, or you can go to tsa.gov/precheck, enter your location and start to enroll. You're going to enter your basic biographical information to include your name, your address, some of the key information, and then you're going to be prompted to make an appointment. So once you arrive at the enrollment center with your documents, it takes about 5 to 7 minutes. They're going to verify the information you provided online. They're going to verify your documents. They're going to accept the payment of $85. They're going to take a quick photo, so we have that in the files, and then you're going to be on your way. About a week later, you're going to receive an email. Then if you're eligible for pre-check, it's going to give you a unique known traveler number. That number should be entered into your reservation every time you travel. Now, next time you book an airline flight, you're going to see there's a box there for your known traveler number. You enter that into that box, that known traveler number. And then when it's time to fly, when TSA does the vetting of travelers, it sees that you're enrolled as a trusted traveler, and that makes you eligible for TSA PreCheck on a consistent basis. And that's how the system works. So you have to enter your own number. Mhm.
Thank you.
Sure, of course. Any other questions? Okay, well, I have my contact information here. I encourage you to follow me on Twitter and give me a call or send me an email with anything. And I will watch for those, and I'll definitely be following up on the questions that I've received to make sure that I've given you.
Whoop.
I'm back.
Back on the other.
Were you writing that down?
See, am I on here or not? Hey, Patricia,
Yep.
I was curious on, just got on, we were late, with the global entry between Canada and the States. I noticed when you get in there, you have Nexus, but the global entry, you have to go on the short line. Is there any way that the global entry is used for the fast lane?
So if you're trying to go on the land crossing between Canada and the United States, and you have global entry, which is for the expedited clearance when you arrive on a flight from overseas, it does not work. It only works at the land border crossing. They both work in the TSA pre-check lane. But for example, if John is a Nexus card holder and he comes into SeaTac on a flight from, you name the place overseas, it's not going to recognize him and allow him in. The same thing if you have global entry and you're trying to get into Canada, they're not going to do it because the Canadians have not cleared you for expedited entry. So I always say to people,
I noticed that from Canada driving into US, you have Nexus lanes, but you don't have a global entry.
that is correct.
Yeah.
Because
You
it's a
go on the
different,
regular line.
it's a different vetting process. It's a different vetting process. So anyways, but yeah, it is. I don't have Nexus myself, but I can tell you that if I went to Canada more, I would get it. I would even wait for it. It's that good.
Thing of it is we go traveling more foreign than Canada, so Nexus doesn't work for foreign.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, very good. It's a very interesting program. It has a lot of ins and outs, and I'm glad that we're talking about it because we do think that it's probably worth people's money. And now is the time to plan. I will tell you, for several months, the global entry enrollment sites were closed because of COVID. And the previous summer, they were closed because many of those officers were reassigned to the southern border. So there is somewhat of a backlog for global entry as well. But if you're willing to wait for it, it may be a good investment. If you're traveling domestically and you're planning to do so once people are vaccinated and we're going to have more flexibility, you might want to enroll just in TSA pre-check.
So I have the global entry and it's already extended a year.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I know that the re-enrollment when you're renewing, can be a significant delay. That happened to my family, and they lost their TSA pre-check benefits for several months as a result. That's-
My wife got hers earlier and went right through and, but then after August, they changed it. Now you gotta wait, but they extended it a whole year.
That's nice. Oh, that's very generous. Wow. Very good.
So it's a 6-year job, yeah.
That's good.
What would you recommend for overseas airline travel coming back into the US?
I would recommend global entry.
Okay, that
And
we have
just,
Nexus, but the global entry would be better.
it would be better because you go right to a kiosk upon landing. And if you've been on any of those long flights, if you fly from Dubai to SeaTac, you've been on the plane for 15 hours. The last thing you want to do is stand in an immigration line for an hour, waiting to get cleared into the country. Otherwise, you just go right to a kiosk, you put your fingerprints on the machine, and it's a random factor to do a check. Otherwise, you're cleared into the country, and then you can sit down or stand up, whatever you want to do, waiting for your luggage, and you're out of there. And so it's definitely worth it. So something else that I want to mention about TSA PreCheck is if you're enrolled and you have someone 12 or under traveling with you on the same itinerary, they're also eligible for TSA PreCheck with you. And so if you're traveling with your kids or your grandkids, it's a great way to be able to stay together, and they get that benefit as well. Once they turn 13, they got to qualify on their own. Let's hope. So anyways, all right. Well, if you can send other questions to me, I'd be happy to answer them and get you in touch.
What was your Twitter account again?
Oh yeah. So it's at TSA _ Pacific, like Pacific Northwest, but just Pacific.
I don't know if we need it.
I don't do Twitter, but I might find out.
Sure. Kind of fun. Don't read the comments, right?
_ Pacific.
Yeah. People are ruthless, but not you guys. So, all right. Well, we can talk a little bit about the reason that you invited us. He was so generous to get in touch with TSA headquarters. And then that invitation came to me. And then I've worked with Kylan before on other projects. And so I've invited her to be part of the conversation today. It is always helpful to have one of our uniformed officers who's on the floor every day working with travelers, who can share her experience, can give you those tips. And so I would just say, if you want to open it up for questions, or Kylan, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself? And then we'll see where it goes from there.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Kylan Hjort again, and I am a lead transportation security officer based out of your local Painfield Airport. And we summarized a little bit about what my responsibilities are and my duties are, but I want to just refresh your memory since we kind of got on another topic for a little while. I am responsible for leading a group of officers through the daily happenings of the checkpoint screening area. And I also am in charge of documenting and reporting metrics and being able to be available for any specific scenarios at the checkpoint that might require a little additional support and knowledge.
Mm-hmm. So she's undergone the training to be a passenger support specialist. And you may have heard of the program TSA Cares. And that is a program that was started about 8 years ago in TSA, where any traveler can reach out to TSA with any type of concern. It could be that you're afraid to fly. It could be that you have an autistic child. It could be that you are, maybe you have an elderly parent who's going to travel alone and you're concerned about them going through security. No issue is too small. What they'll do is they'll pair you up with somebody at the airport you're departing from. We'll ask you to provide your flight information, a little bit about what the situation is. And then we go to our resources and we pair you up with someone who can help you. You tell us what help you need, whether it's curb to gate or something in between, and we'll be there to assist you. We have requests where we do have people say, can you meet us at our vehicle? Or say, right when I get into the checkpoints, when I need that assistance. And we'll have an officer trained to assist you and help you for as little or as much as you need. Now, in the case of this group, I was talking to Kylan about this actually recently, and she told me something I was really surprised about the frequency of the number of passengers who come through with ostomy bags. Can you-
Sure. So at least with, I originally started at SeaTac and much larger airport, far more passengers. So naturally it became very commonplace very quickly for me when I got certified to engage with passengers that are traveling with an ostomy bag. It was on a multi-daily basis. When I transferred over to Painfield, it has actually become almost as frequent, even though we've been seeing less passenger loads lately. We still continuously see at least 1 to 2 passengers a day traveling with an ostomy bag.
I think that that's really helpful information for you to know that it is common. This is something that they see regularly. I can tell you as a TSA officer, if you spend any amount of checkpoint you do, you encounter all kinds of situations. And it's our job and the officers' jobs to ensure that people get through the checkpoint, not only securely, but comfortably, and have a confidence that they're going to be treated fairly, and that, that their expectation is that they'll make it through without any concerns. Now, because Kylan has received that additional training, she's a great resource for you locally. You could call and ask for her by name, and if she's on duty, she'll be available to assist you. And
Absolutely.
that's great to know. So the other thing I wanted to share about that is, if you're in a situation in the checkpoint, and maybe you haven't called ahead, maybe we don't know you're coming, something happens, things aren't going right for whatever reason, I always tell every traveler, you can ask for a supervisor at any point during the security screening process. And what will happen is, instead of things going a little bit south, which we all know sometimes situations are like that, you ask for a supervisor and they will come assist that officer. So as a traveler, you have the right to do that. Now, I guarantee you, if you're working with Kylan, you're never going to have to ask for a supervisor. She is a great officer who is roundly and appraised for her work, but not every flight of yours is going to start at Painfield. So keep that
Yeah,
in mind.
that works to a point. My wife has it about half of the time because she's allergic to that nitrate test. The chemical is being used and it shuts down her breathing. And we use a supervisor, and half the time they still try to use it and knock out of her breath. And the other half the time they realize that she's allergic to it, shuts her down, and we get around it.
What would you suggest, Kylan, in that situation?
So in that instance, it is an excellent idea, as Lori had suggested, to get a supervisor involved, because they're going to have, one, knowledge, but also two, just general experience with working with more passengers, because the majority of our supervisors have had many, many years with TSA to earn their third stripe. And speaking from experience working with those that have been on an oxygen tank, we completely understand that they're an extension of your person, and that if for any reason you become uncomfortable during the screening process, that we're able to stop, pause, reevaluate, and we can get another set of hands or a set of eyes involved. And we can also rely a little bit on what your previous experiences have been, and we'll come to a common understanding and agreement about how we can best screen you and your medical equipment.
Yeah, this is not oxygen. This is, if that patch gets anywhere near her, her breathing stops.
So
My
allergic to
apologies.
smell
I'm sorry, I
completely.
misunderstood the scenario.
No,
So-
and I have a compression sleeve on my arm, and that seems to bother people, even though they could see there's nothing underneath it.
So Andy and Pauline, you are great candidates to call TSA Cares, and here's why. If you call them and give them your flight information, they're going to connect you with someone ahead of going through screening. And that person will ensure that the explosive trace detection software is not used on you, and it's not take place anywhere near you. Because by us knowing you're coming, we'll know, the staff who's working in the checkpoint will know, and we'll be able to keep that away from you. Now, there's something that's kind of difficult to hear, and I understand this, and that is, regardless of any medical situation, no one is exempt from screening. So if something alarms the security screening process, our officers are required to resolve that alarm. They have a variety of ways to do that. And knowing that you have this situation up front is going to help them prevent causing you any medical distress. And it sounds like that would be quite upsetting. I can't imagine what that would be like, but we would never want to put you in that situation. But if we know you're coming, we should be able to avoid that.
Okay.
Has anyone ever called TSA Cares?
No, what is the number, please?
Okay, well, I'm going to give you a little presentation. I'll bring up a web browser here in a minute, and I'll show you that information. We ask people call 72 hours prior to flight departure. And the reason for that is
Card, I think.
we know who is going to be on staff. We know who will have received the training. We know who will be available to assist you. And you will also know how much assistance you want to have that close to your flight. So that's something that you should, keep in mind, because that is going to be very valuable for you to pass on to our people. Okay. So I'm going to give you the number verbally, and then I'm going to show you the website I think that Sue sent out earlier. It is 855. So it's a toll-free number. 855-787-2227. Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
So every time I've gone through security, I've always handed them the little TSA card that I've printed up, and I've actually, put it through the laminator and everything. So does that do me any good? Because it seems like most of the time they really don't even really look at it.
Okay. Kylan?
So from previous experience, a lot of officers, we have been trained to be able to identify the card that you have provided us with, and to be able to evaluate and read your needs based off of what the information you've provided. However, unfortunately, we are made up of a body of very diverse folks. And so not everyone is going to give the attention and care to looking at that information. So it might be necessary, if you feel comfortable, to verbally provide that information and just affirm that that individual has in fact seen, heard, and received the information that you were trying to provide.
Yeah, I'm never shy about it. I always say, I hand them a card, and I always say, I have an ostomy on my left side. And so that, if I have to go through the part where they take the picture, then, I know that they're going to come with the little rubs, the thing that I rub on myself. And I have to say, it is way better than it used to be, because the first time I went through TSA with an ostomy years ago, they took me in a separate room. They had two women in there. I had to undo my pants. I mean, it was awful. But now with them just, handing me a piece of something that I have to rub on myself, I don't have a problem with that. But I just feel like sometimes they don't really pay attention to what I've already said. And it's almost like it's a surprise when something comes up on the screen.
Well, I am sorry that unfortunately you've not had the best experience every time, but that's why we're here having these conversations and providing you guys with some more information. And I also want to suggest that if you, even just to get through that basic interaction, that having a passenger support specialist with you can walk you through that and streamline your process and make you feel like you're getting that additional level of tact that you might not get otherwise. However, if you provide that information that you have an ostomy bag, every single one of our officers has a base knowledge and a base level of training that they have received to understand the purpose of your device, to understand that it's an extension of your person and that it should be treated with dignity and respect, and that they know how to effectively screen your device as well. And I also want to right. And I want to also offer to you that if any time during the screening process that it becomes uncomfortable, the officer prior to touching a person should offer you a private screening room at the very beginning of your interaction. However, if for whatever reason that step gets skipped, please know that you can always ask for it at any point during the screening process, and you and your property will be escorted over to a private, more comfortable room, and we can screen you and your device in a more comfortable setting for you if that's more comfortable.
Yes. So, and I hear what you're saying, and I've heard that a lot about the cards that we have on our website that people bring. And a lot of people like to be really discreet, so they want to hand the card and not have to tell people around them. And we get that. And it's unfortunate that sometimes you feel like they're not listening to you. But once again, asking for a supervisor will also circumvent that scenario. Also having a passenger support specialist, they'll already know what those concerns are and be able to escort you through. So I think what I'm going to do is Sue sent this, or she had said that she had sent this website to all of you earlier. Just a moment, let me.
To the people in our chapter, the other chapters
Okay.
didn't get it. And we're fairly evenly split.
Okay, hold on. Let's see. Let me share right here. All right, so this is the website. It's under our Office of Civil Rights and Civil Liberties. So if you go to the TSA main website, in the upper right-hand corner, it'll say A to Z index. You can go there and you can look for TSA cares. You can look for civil rights. If you look for civil rights in the alphabetical listing, it will bring you to this page. And what's important about this is there's a link right here. The disability branch addresses disability-based complaints under section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act. If you click that, it's going to give you a drop down of various scenarios and tips to get through the security checkpoint. So here's a section on ostomies, what you can expect in a standard lane, what you can expect in a pre-check lane. The one thing it says is tell the officer.
That was great.
So this is a great resource for you of what to expect, because if you familiarize yourself with this information and you come to the checkpoint and you feel like this isn't being followed, ask for a supervisor. You have a reasonable expectation that this is the process. Another one we get a lot of questions about is traveling with medication. So we're talking about medically necessary medications, what you should do. You can, for example, bring an amount of medically necessary liquid, usually for the duration of the flight, or something that you need to keep with you when you're traveling because you need it and you can't afford it to potentially get lost in checked baggage. You need to tell our officer you're traveling with that and it will be screened and you'll be able to continue with that. Okay, and this
Do you
goes.
need a prescription for that to go with you?
That is a great question. So traveling domestically through the TSA security checkpoint, you do not need to bring your prescription. Your medications do not even need to be in their original prescription bottles.
Okay.
You're concerned about a security threat. Now, if you're traveling internationally and you're going to a foreign country or returning, I would recommend keeping them in their original containers in case there were questions, but that is not necessary when you're traveling domestically. I would say, Kylan, you could tell me, I'm sure every hour of every day, people have medications with them. Is that right?
Absolutely. Almost every 10 to 15 minutes, we'll have somebody traveling with some medically necessary medication or device that needs to get some form of screening. It's very commonplace.
Yes. And I would say if you're traveling with medications, with pills, those types of things, those do not need to come out of your carry-on. You can leave those in your carry-on bag. They will not alarm the equipment. Our officers know that a lot of people travel with those. They're used to seeing them on the x-ray. And if they did need to take a quick look, you would tell me you have medications in there. They'd be quickly able to resolve that. So back to this page, once again, it's very helpful because it does have a lot of these scenarios. Kylan and I were on a podcast about a little more than a week ago, I think. We were talking about traveling with a type 1 diabetic and their equipment and what they can expect in the checkpoint. And the more we can talk about this so people know what to expect, the better trip they're going to have through the security checkpoint. We'd rather talk to you now than have to talk to you after the fact when you were surprised by something. So we were really grateful for this opportunity to do that. But anyway, so back to this page. Yes, go ahead, Lori.
One more question. I'm sorry to keep interrupting. If you have a liquid or like a spray for, I often use something in my ostomy and it comes in a bigger bottle, or it has there's a spray that comes in more than the 3.4 ounces. How does that work?
Well, I will take that on. How about that? Does that sound okay, Lori?
Yeah.
All right. So if you are traveling with any liquids, gels, or aerosols that exceed our 3.4 ounce limit and they are medically necessary, go ahead and give that information over to the officer that is standing there telling you what you need to take out of your bag. And we recommend that you take those items out, set them into a separate bin or a bowl, depending on how many of them you have and what the quantity is. And then submit them through the x-ray screening. And then they will get flagged because they'll need a little additional screening to ensure that they are in fact not a security threat, but they absolutely can get through. The biggest thing is just separating them from your bag, so your bag doesn't need to get in and we don't need to touch your bag unnecessarily, and we can just screen those items specifically. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it is. I've always been a little afraid. I always carry all my ostomy supplies on board with me because I can't take the chance of losing the bags, right?
Sure.
And so I'm always afraid to put my spray or my liquid in my carry-on because I don't want to have it confiscated and then I don't have it, so I've never tried to get it through.
Yes.
Well, go ahead.
So I think what Lori's talking about is, there are things that are not prescribed by a doctor that are still part of the ostomy kit. Odor controlling things, that you can buy over the counter or from Amazon or something that are not prescribed. So I guess some clarity on what is considered medically necessary would be helpful.
Kylan?
Sure. So and I want to use this carefully as I say this, if you say that an item that you're bringing through is medically necessary, it is not my job to question you on what you need for your person and for your safety and for your comfort through the duration of your flight. You might get a little additional questioning about the specific item, and a supervisor might get involved just to be able to give that officer the okay on the item, but your items and your person will still be able to get through. They might just need the additional screening that any other medically exempt or medically necessary item would receive.
Also, Kylan, what about powders? Now, there are powders needed for ostomies as well. Will that have a greater scrutiny because it might be considered something else?
So powders in general, if they exceed a certain size and a certain amount, will always be flagged, even if it is a bag of sugar or if it is talcum powder, any other form of a powdery substance, generally will get flagged for additional screening. So if you already know that you're going to be traveling with those items and it's frequent that it ends up getting flagged for additional screening, just like I suggested with any other medically necessary equipment, I recommend that you go ahead and take those items out, separate them from your carry-on luggage and put them into a separate bin, and go ahead and let that officer that is helping you get your items divest know that those items are for are medically necessary. And then that way it'll just kind of jet line the experience for you. However, powders in general will receive some form of explosive trace detection screening to ensure that it is not a security threat.
Yeah.
One more question.
Sure, this is why we're here.
If you're in TSA pre-screen and you're not taking things out of your bags, should I still take out any liquids or powders or whatever and put it in the bin, or do I just let it be in my bag?
So this is unfortunately the catch-22 of TSA pre-check and being an individual traveling with medically necessary equipment, right? And I'm sure that most of you have gone through this in some way. My suggestion in general with medically necessary items, whether you're traveling with a pre-check status or as a standard passenger, is to remove those items and separate them from your luggage so you don't have to have your luggage ruffled through to get to those items and then have to do the additional screening. It's much simpler for you. Even if you think it might get flagged for screening, we just recommend you take it out, set it in a separate bin. We get a quick image of it and we do the quick screening on it and we get you on your way.
Okay.
What about scissors?
Oh, yeah.
What about
Excellent
scissors?
question. So scissors are allowed to be 7 inches long or less from the fulcrum of the scissor.
Okay.
So
the
here's an example of
blade.
a pair of scissors. This is a standard a crafting scissor. And
Right.
this is very much less than 7 inches from this point right here, right?
Okay.
So if you have some sort of large kitchen shear, that's probably not going to go through. So just look for something that's a little bit more compact and easy to be able to travel with.
Sure.
If there are a smaller pair of scissors, we're not even going to need to look at them. We'll be able to tell from that focal point on the x-ray that they are in fact within the size limit.
Okay.
So let me offer just a little bit of context to
Yeah.
medically necessary liquids. So
My
what
hope that
happens?
was foreign country, dear.
No, being nasty.
Well, it was still a foreign country, it wasn't a stateside.
So what I want to talk a little bit about is the medically necessary liquid. So here's what happens sometimes is people will want to bring maybe 6 bottles of water through. And they're like, well, I need this because I get really thirsty. Well, water can be purchased usually on the secure side,
Mhm.
security checkpoint. It's offered on the plane usually, at least in their normal times. It can be purchased anywhere. There may be cases where maybe a mother who is mixing formula for their baby may need to have a distilled water or a certain type of water. Then that would be okay for the duration of the flight. But what we're trying to avoid is people saying that every type of liquid is medically necessary when it's a commonly
If it's in this original container.
airport or at their destination. Now, someone like members of this group, when you say, this is medically necessary for me, Kylan is right. She cannot question that. You're not bringing through a commonly available item. And
No,
that's
and usually
if
it's
you
in
think
within its own
about
packaging.
what we're talking about. So just kind of keep that in mind. You all fall outside of that, that example, because you do want to carry the things with you and you can't afford not to have them. And you don't want to be scrambling at your destination to get them. And Kylan and her colleagues know that. So you should be in pretty good hands. And once again, if you feel like you're not getting that response, ask for a supervisor and you'll be in great hands. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close this this web page, but like I said, I'm going to send these links to Sue so she can share them all with you, so you'll have them, and that way we can all see each other again.
Can I give a comment?
Of course.
Go ahead.
Okay. We watched this wonderful program on Canadian TV about the Customs and Border Patrol agents. And it's mostly the US agents at the Canadian border or at the various ports of entry. And it's a very interesting program. And
Is it current?
Huh?
Is it current?
Pretty current.
Wow.
I mean, I don't know if it's been done since COVID hit, but but anyway, and we don't watch it, every day because we're not up there all the time. But anyway, another time we were leaving Amsterdam and the agent asked my husband if he could remove his bag so he could examine it better.
Glad you're in the US.
Anyway,
Well,
that
my
was-
answer was to him as I unzipped it, I had the bag and I says, if I remove it, there's going to be shit all over the place. He turned red, decided to leave it alone and said, thank you. And that was the end of it.
But it gave us a laugh.
That was universal language, I guess.
Yeah.
I think he understood it.
Well, in other parts of the world, they have very different procedures. I know when my daughter and my husband and I were traveling through Amsterdam, a man patted her down,
Mm-hmm.
my teenage daughter, before I even knew what was happening. And I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Because we're used to that not ever happening here. Someone of the same gender as you appear will take care of that. And he was checking her waistband and
Wow.
you know, it was surprising for me. Luckily we were there and there's no harm, no foul, but it will kind of surprise you.
Yes, it will.
Mhm.
Appreciate you coming.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It is our
Yeah.
pleasure.
Yeah. So,
Thank you for your service too.
oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank
Well,
you.
you know, TSA is a big agency, and like any big organization. There's always a few maybe incidents or people that may define you, but we know that we're actually much greater than that, and that we have a core of officers like Kylan and her colleagues, and we are always happy to come out and talk about these things, because I think you're going to find that the more information you have, the more power you're going to have when you come to the checkpoint, because you know what to expect and you know what your rights are, and that's important. It's important to us and it's important to you. So,
Thank you.
is there anything else? Of course, you can email me and I can touch base with Kylan. I'll be in touch with Sue with the follow-up information as things become available, or as I pass it on to you. Do you mind if I take a quick picture of this group?
Go ahead.
There's one of our,
My Twitter feed.
one
Here
of
we
us
go.
is
Little
not-
smile of everybody.
Lori, will you make sure, I mean, I know she'll probably do it because she's great, Sue's great, but make sure that, like, you know, your contact information, the you know, email, all that stuff is included with that thing, with whatever Sue sends back out to the group.
Absolutely.
TSA,
And we
Carrie,
will post it to our
Carrie.
website too.
Oh, sure. That I have no problems with that. What I do is, like I said, if I don't know the answer, I always find somebody who does. And so I'll be able to follow up on those questions we had today and be back in touch with you, and never hesitate to reach out. We'll get you what you need. So that's part of my job.
Appreciate
Okay.
it.
Also, I was told by the UOAA, the TSA works works with them quite well, and that if we have an issue that can't get resolved, we can talk to the UOAA and they will work it through with the TSA.
What is the OAA?
UOAA, United Ostomy Associations of America.
Okay, so I know that they are a member of a group that meets regularly with TSA. And what
That's
they
what she
do is they
said.
dialogue on procedures and processes to see what can be improved and what the members are seeing, and then they can feed that back. So absolutely, that's really good. That's a great resource too. So,
And
really
I guess you
pleased we have
folks come to our conferences, national conferences too, so.
and they have a new head of that office, and he is fantastic. He's a very proactive, caring person. So you're in great
Right.
hands with him. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Anything else?
I wanted to say to Kylan that the Everett Airport is amazing.
No, I'm so glad to
Amazing.
hear.
I will second that. I actually went through last year, before COVID, to go down to a conference in Vegas, and I literally was in and out of there in, I think, 2.5 minutes. I mean, first of all, there wasn't much of a line, so obviously that helped, but I literally like walked right through, and I was kind of expecting to get stopped because of the ostomy and everything, but the agent was great. They're like, you know, is it good? And I just showed it, and they're like, they did the self-test thing really quick, and
Our best
Every
airport
time,
is Reagan
know.
in DC.
I think that it is true. Painfield is really, for people who live up north, it's just so convenient, and a smaller airport is always just, it's just much easier for the traveler to come through. And yeah, you're very blessed to have that. And of course, we have a great staff up there too. So very good. All right. Well, let's keep in touch. Okay, Sue. And
Okay, thank you very much.
you let me
We
know.
look forward to seeing you at Payne Field again soon.
Oh, and Kylan, I have a Kylan in my family that was born 4 months ago, and you're the first person otherwise that I've heard with that name. So it's nice to meet you.
Oh, it's nice to meet you too. You see, the couple of times I've met a Kylan, they're generally boys because it's
Yeah, this one's a
traditionally an
boy
Irish
too.
boy's name. So,
Yeah, he's a little boy. Yeah.
oh, well, congratulations. That's so exciting. And
It is.
it's a good name.
It is. It is.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank
Take care,
you.
everyone.
Bye.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye-bye now.
Bye.
That worked out really well.